Welcome to another episode of Cyber Threat Thursday. This one is a really fun one for me. I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague and supporter, Tate Jarrow, here from Google. The first time I met Tate, he said, I believe in your mission. So, however I can help, whether it's through Google or not, I'm here to help because I believe in what you're doing. And that's really stuck with me. And I appreciate you saying that, Tate, when we first met. So, thank you for being here today. I'm Kristin with the Cybercrime Support Network. We are giving people the resources they need to fight cybercrime. And today we're going to talk about scamspotter.org, which is a program that we did in partnership with Google. But first, I'd like to have Tate introduce himself. Give us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now for Google. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kristin. And yes, that's a great memory. I completely forgot about that, but it's as true now as it was back then. And I'm so passionate about this space because I think that uh, normal people getting scammed is such a problem in the United States. I mean, worldwide, but in the United States, we feel it. And the resources from a government perspective are not what companies like JP Morgan or name the company when they have a problem. SolarWinds, the government spends lots of money to solve those crimes. But when my grandmother is scammed out of $1,000, the resources aren't there. And that's why organizations like the Cybercrime Support Network are so important. So I fully believe in the mission. A little bit about me. Sorry for that intro there.
No, it's great.
So I'm Tate. I'm at Google. I've been at Google for a little over 2.5 years. And before that, I was in the United States Secret Service as a special agent. And I did cyber investigations. And a lot of people might not know, but the Secret Service, we have a mandate for protection, which everybody's familiar with, but also financial investigations. And so cybercrime, especially now, is one of the most important pillars of the Secret Service's mission. And so I did that for 8.5 years before coming to Google. Now at Google, I've done a couple of roles, but where I am now is I'm what's called a founder in residence within Area 120. Area 120 is Google's internal incubator. We build experimental projects, and I'm working on online safety in that space and really excited to explore experimental projects in that space, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and we can't wait to see what you come up with and partner with you on it, because I know it's so exciting that Google does give people like you an opportunity to just try new things, because we have to get innovative in this space or we're not going to win. So I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Yeah, me too. It's great, and yeah, and I think it's one of the great things about Google as a company is all over the company. There's really interesting things going on in all sorts of different areas, and the partnership with the Cybercrime Support Network is just one area that's interesting to me, but it's just one of many areas that Google partners with nonprofits to affect positive change.
Well, and you don't even just give us money, sponsorship, and then say good luck with that. We feel like in some ways we're embedded with the AdWords team. We're embedded with the team that helped create our website, Scam Spotter. And you really are helping us with a lot of in-kind support, which has put us on the map. And so I want to make sure people understand that there's a lot of companies out there that don't just say, oh, here's a check so we can have our name on your website. It's more about really partnering with you. And I've been partnering with Google even in my last job now for about 10 years. And I really appreciate it. So I want to talk to people about scamspotter.org. When we were approached, I think it was probably February or March of last year, about, we really need to have a site that's simple to use, only has 4 pages on it. The font is big enough so that people can read it, and it's simple and it's exciting. So what was your thought and why we needed to create Scam Spotter just to get started?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the reason why is because so many people are getting scammed all the time. And you can see on the website, I think it gives the 2019 FTC Sentinel fraud report numbers, which are astronomical. They're in the billions, and millions of people every year are getting defrauded. As we know, COVID has not been good for cybercrime. Well, it's been good for cyber criminals.
They're good for the criminals, right? Yeah, exactly.
So the numbers are even worse, and so prevention is so important. And prevention really comes from awareness and building awareness of potential victims, So they have that spidey sense, something's not right here. And we give them concrete strategies to protect themselves. And that's what this website does really well, in my very biased opinion.
Yeah, well, and first of all, it has to be interesting to look at. So, working with your team and the people that you brought in to actually create the design, it's got a lot of flair to it. It's fun. It's got a quiz, which I think keeps people engaged. But we came up with 3 simple golden rules, because if you make it simple like that, just, how did we all learn to cross the street? Moms and dads taught us, look left, look right before you cross. And it's something simple that we've all remembered. So talk to us about the 3 golden rules that if people follow these 3 golden rules, we could probably stop a lot of losses. What are they?
Yes. So the 3 golden rules are slow it down, spot check, and stop, don't send. And the reason I love the 3 golden rules are they're simple. And it goes along with the website. It's simple and it's obtainable and understandable by people who are not necessarily familiar with technology or the internet or crime or how cyber criminals operate. But they can read this website at any age level and understand these 3 golden rules. And that I think is critical, because what I find when I talk to colleagues, friends, and family who are concerned about the people in their lives who might get scammed, they are looking for simple resources to help them have conversations. And so I think this is a great resource, 1, to help you have a conversation, but then 2, also to have your loved one actually go there and engage with the material themselves. So I think it's really powerful for both of those reasons.
All right, so let's start with golden rule number 1, slow down. Why do people have to slow down?
Well, when you slow down, it lets you have time to think, which means it's more likely you will decide that something is weird here. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's where we want people to get to, is understand that when people are asking you for money in these various scams, it's weird. And they're preying on people who don't realize that. And so taking time and slowing it down, 1, is a good way to help you think. But then the other thing is the bad actors know this. And so they have time pressure. They want to be quick. 1, it's a volume game for them. So they don't want to spend a long investment with you. They'll just move on to somebody else if it's taking too long. And so by slowing it down, the other thing that happens is you'll trigger the bad actor to do behavior that will hopefully make it seem even more weird by trying to rush it and trying to make it seem urgent. And that's that's the other advantage of slowing it down.
Yeah, and these phishing emails that come through, or the text messages, when they are a scam, you have to act quickly. Even the grandparent scam, my mother-in-law was called by supposedly my son saying, "Grandma, I need help right now. I've been in a car accident. It was very urgent. I need $11,000 right now. Don't call mom. I don't have time. My phone's broken. I'm on my friend's phone." And that people, if they care about someone, then they're gonna act. But if you do take a minute to stop and think, you know what? I know Connor is in Michigan. I'm going to call his mom. And, now let's get on to number 2. I was giving a little bit of heads up. Now, spot check. What does spot check mean? So once you slow down, it gives you the chance to go to golden rule number 2, which is now spot check.
Yes. So spot check, basically do research, take a second to think about what's going on, and double check if the story makes sense. And you just gave a great example with the grandparent scam. The kid, the cousin, whatever, is in grave peril, or they have a big problem that only you can solve within 5 minutes if you send a huge amount of money in a weird way. That, like, calling the mom or calling the victim is a spot check, and that would completely defeat that scam. And I will also say that spot check, another way to do spot check is to Google or use a search engine about what's happening, because most of these scams, well, I will say probably all of them, are being repeated all over the place, and there's information about them, including sites like this, where if you were to do a quick search, you would probably see that this is a common thing that happens, and it is a scam.
That's a really good point to say. And sometimes you can even say, this phone number just called me, and it'll come up, wait, that phone number scammed millions of other people. But yeah, go to your search engine and say, is this for real? There's the Snopes.com that helps you figure out if something's real or not. But there are resources out there because fortunately people are talking to each other and saying, don't let this get, don't send money to this person or this is a scam. And I heard a guy say to me the other day, it was really great. We were on a panel and his idea was hop off, which I thought was a really tangible. So the part of spot check is if you're in an email with someone or on a phone, hop off and then go do your own due diligence. Go to your actual bank. Hop off the email where it says, I'm your bank, and then go actually check and see if it was your bank. So yeah, doing that spot checking. And again, if you just take a few minutes, it can probably save you a lot of money. And then the criminals aren't going to be as successful.
Yeah. And by the way, I think this is another reason why the 3 rules are great, is that it doesn't matter if it's an email, a text message, a phone call, a letter, like
Yeah.
they work for all of them. And that's good because the bad actors are going to hit people from all these different areas right now. Yeah. Phone calls are really high. I think I never answer my phone if I don't recognize a phone number.
Me too.
Yeah. But the elderly people are more likely to answer the phone, and bad actors know this, right? And so these rules apply to all of these different vectors, and that I think again the simplicity is really, really helpful and a really great way to help educate and prevent these scams from the people we care about.
Agree. And the text messages are starting to increase scam. Have you found that too? So people have to watch out for the text messages that are coming through also.
Yes, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
And not just, and also social media messages, right? Instagram, direct messages, Facebook messages. If it's a way to communicate, a bad actor is leveraging it in order to try to make money. Absolutely.
They're going wherever the people are. Okay, so then we've got golden rule number 1 is to slow down. Number 2 is to spot check. And number 3 is stop, don't send. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can. That's pretty self-explanatory. Don't send money. Don't send money. I think that goes without saying. What I'll call out is that oftentimes what we'll see is bad actors are trying to use payment methods which make it hard for the victim to get that money back. So that's where gift cards, we see that all the time. Cryptocurrency, this is why ransomware exists, is leveraging cryptocurrency, because once that goes out the door, once you give them the gift card number and the PIN code, it's gone. There's nothing you can do. And that's what bad actors want, because they get the money, they don't want to be able to have it, 1, traced to them, and then 2, they don't want the money leaving and going back. And so if the FBI asks you to get gift cards, that's weird. So stop, don't send is, again, all about thinking about what's going on, giving the person with these 3 simple tools, hey, I remember I'm not supposed to send money. And then hopefully that'll trigger that this is weird reaction and stop them from getting scammed. And that's why I think it's a great golden rule, because it tells people just don't send the money.
Right.
And then if they know that and they're getting asked for money, it'll trigger that weird reflex, which will then hopefully prevent them from being scammed.
Yeah, you've really given us a good synopsis as to why we created this site. We wanted these 3 simple things that we could say over and over again. And you mentioned a little bit too about someone could sit down with others. And we've had people contact us that say, someone in my family is what I think embroiled in a romance scam. What do I do? And what we're telling them is sit down with them and look at Scam Spotter together. So it's not you telling them that they're being defrauded. It's Google and CSN. And so, hopefully we have a little bit of a legitimacy as being the ones telling people, and then they can go through these steps. They can do the reverse image search on Google, and they can find out that maybe that picture is being used on 3,000 different Facebook sites. It's usually military or someone who's on an oil rig, supposedly. But, having that place for someone to sit down with someone they care about, we really try and advocate for that. It's a good talking point and a place to go instead of just all the shame that comes along with adult children saying to their mother, oh, you should just stop doing that. Well, that doesn't work very well. What do you think about using it as a tool among family members and friends?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you also bring up a really important part about why normal, intelligent people fall for these scams is that bad actors leverage emotional triggers and emotional connection. So romance scheme is all about an emotional connection and making people want to believe what has been told to them, that this is someone who cares, the scammer is someone who cares about them and needs help. Or like we talked about, the bad news scam or the emergency scam. It's an emotional reaction. I need to help someone I care about. And that can be really hard to break that thinking. And like you said, especially for, adult children, telling your parents this, that can be really, really hard. And so I 100% agree. Like a tool like this, using it as part of that conversation can be a way to break that mindset and to get past that emotional connection or the emotional feeling that is leading to victims getting believing these scams.
Yeah. And thanks to Google's support too, what we're going to continue to do is, as new types of scams come up, we're going to change some of the content on there. But right now, so we have COVID-19 scams, vaccine scams, whatever sort of the top scams. But then we also have it in categories of the good news and the bad news, and then the romance scams. The romance scams, to me, that's one of the top things that people come to see us, and it's one of the most devastating scams. Because you said it's part of the heart, but people are also giving away their life savings. But talk a little bit about why we did good news scams and bad news scams, and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's very cleverly done, because there's so many different types and variations of good news scams and bad news scams that trying to list them all individually is difficult, and I think makes the material harder to consume. So good news could be a lottery. It could be publishing clearinghouse. It could publishers clearinghouse. It could be inheritance. That's a big one. You had some uncle that you didn't know about who
now it needs to give you $1 million. Right. Yeah, exactly.
It just costs $10,000 to get it. And so I think there's a lot of things that go into these categories, but again, it's more attainable if you just think about, am I getting good news that I wasn't expecting? That's great. I shouldn't have to pay for that. And that's where, again, these 3 rules will come into play and help people pause, think about it, do some research, and then, okay, I'm not going to spend money on good news. But yeah, so I think it makes it more attainable, and that's really important. And then bad news, same thing. There's so many variations of these scams. And so having a simple way to think about it and communicate that to a loved one, I think is important.
Yeah, because if it is a good news scam, most of them have similar attributes.
Right.
And if they say you won a lottery and you're going to win $1 million, guess what? They're going to say, but you only have 2 days to give us the $10,000. And so it's going to be urgent, just like we talked about. And then you've got to go and say, okay, this was supposedly Publishers Clearinghouse. Let me go to the actual Publishers Clearinghouse. This is the spot check, and find out, are they really giving away money where I have to give money first? And then stop, don't send. You should never have to send money or gift cards to win a prize. And gift cards, I love how we talk about gift cards are never a form of payment. They're gifts. Gift cards are not payment. And that simple rule right there, to me, I'd never heard it put that way until our teams got together and came up with that. Gift cards are never payment, and the FBI will never ask you to pay them in gift cards. I've seen one ransomware note where it said, this is the FBI, we've locked your computer. You can pay us by going to either, I think it was Walgreens, Walmart, or 7-Eleven and wire us money. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the FBI does not use 7-Eleven to wire money, but they were scaring people, saying, we saw that you were involved in child pornography and you're going to be arrested. And even if the person knows they weren't, they don't want to be arrested and embroiled in something like that. So there's just this urgency that you better hurry up or you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So, and again, it's the emotional, it's playing on emotion to make people, to get them out of that thinking, like the logical thinking path.
Right.
And again, this is where these 3 golden rules, the way I think of them is like, these are good ways to get you back into the logical thinking. Because I feel that most people I mean, when you talk to victims, and Kristin, I'll be curious if you agree with this. It's so obvious in retrospect. They
Yes.
understand, for the most part, yes, of course, I should have seen all these signals. Why didn't I at the time? And it's because they weren't thinking about it at the time. And the three golden rules, if you do one of them out of three, you have a chance of getting back into logical thinking and detecting that this is a scam. And that's really, to me, the critical thing, because these are normal people. Normal people are getting scammed. Like I
Very
could get scammed
educated.
tomorrow. Yeah,
Absolutely
cyber
educated. Yeah. It's you
cybersecurity
and I.
I mean,
Exactly.
cybersecurity professionals get scammed.
Of course.
There's a whole campaign in the last couple months that very famously in the cybersecurity research community, where bad actors were using LinkedIn to forge connections and deceive cybersecurity researchers. So if it can happen to people in the field, it can happen to anybody. And so
Right.
doing these three rules is just a great way to maximize the chance that you'll get back into logical thinking and detect a scam and stop losing money and having any further harm happen to you.
And that's why it's so important too to empower people and make sure they know you're not the only one this happens to, and it isn't your fault. But it's a different kind of crime in the fact that they did actually have to do something to be, a victim in a sense. So, if you're walking down the street doing everything and you get mugged, people don't say, "Well, why did you let yourself get mugged?" But if you clicked on something and sent someone money, someone could say to you, "Well, why did you do that? You have some responsibility in that." Well, let me tell you, these criminals know what they're doing. And like you said, it can happen to anyone. But also, what's something that people could do? I like to talk about oversharing because the criminals do research you. If they do want to do a good phishing scam of some kind, whether it's on phone or text message, they do a little bit of research. So, what can people do to make sure that they are less likely to be scammed because they don't have so much out in the public sphere?
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. I think privacy settings are so important, and being aware of what you're sharing and where you are sharing that, and making deliberate decisions is really important. Because you're right. If somebody wants to target you and you're sharing everything about where you live, what you do, your family, they have all sorts of pictures. They can, one, use that against you, but
Right?
they can also use it against your loved ones. And that is, I think, should provide us all a little bit more incentive to take a look at our privacy settings and how we're sharing and make sure that we're not creating exposure that could hurt someone we love. Because again, my grandmother probably doesn't have a social media presence. If I do, and a bad actor can leverage some information to create an emergency scam, a bad news scam with her, my lack of good privacy control
Yeah.
is impacting someone I love. And I think that's the other aspect to cybersecurity and protecting ourselves. It's not just ourselves; it's the people around us that are also affected by our choices online as well.
That's a really, really good way to think about it. And I always tell parents too, if you've started from birth of your child all the way till they're a teenager, creating this digital presence for them, that's going to go with them for a long time. So I like to let people know to think before you post a lot about your children, their birth date, how old they are. Guess what? Now I have their birth date and their, year of birth and where they live, the name of their school, identity theft. I could start putting stuff together. But then if you also say what gym you go to, the fact that you like yoga and you do this and that, I can probably do some research on you for about 10 minutes and then send you an email that sounds really believable because it's all about your yoga studio. Oh, you need to click here because the class got changed, so the world doesn't really need to know all of what you're doing every day, and you really have to be conscious about what you're putting out there.
Yeah, I think that's the fourth golden rule, or the
Yeah.
first golden rule of privacy is think before you post.
Yeah.
But what I tell people is everyone has their own threshold for this, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But make a decision and check your privacy settings and make a decision about what you're comfortable with. Where what I try to prevent is people not realizing that they're exposing themselves because they
Yeah.
haven't checked. And so checking those
Right.
privacy settings and making sure that you're comfortable with what you have is, I
Yeah.
think, really, really critical.
Yeah, it is. Just taking a little bit of time, just like we change our batteries and our smoke detectors. I try and say to people, once a year, go back and double check, because sometimes when you get updates to your social media, the privacy settings go back to default open, and you have to then go and change it back again. So it's just important that you stay on top of it, just like you do your healthcare. And I was just on talking to Ron and Cindy Gula. We were just awarded a grant from their foundation, and they're talking about data care. Everyone understands the word data. I've got a lot of data. I've got to care for it. Cyber, IT, that kind of stuff can be a little more, people think it's maybe for IT professionals, but just take care of your data and watch where it goes. But, if you need help, we have scamspotter.org right now, thanks to our great partners from Google. They've actually created a YouTube ad for us also that's been seen, I think, over 3 million times, which is driving people to the site. But the response has been fantastic. And I think one of the things people like the most about the site is the quiz. So why did we put something interactive on there, like the quiz, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think what the quiz is great is it gives examples, and examples are always a good way to learn. And then gamifying a little bit by creating some competitive, did I get it right?
Yeah.
Is just a good way to build engagement. But I think having those very real world, realistic examples of what you might see or your loved one might see is a really good way to give immediate feedback in this learning around what can be problematic or not. And so, yeah, the quiz takes about 2 minutes, well worth those
Yeah.
2 minutes
It's
for
fun.
sure.
And then, though, at the end, we also put so that you could actually share it. So after you took the quiz, you could say, hey, I got 5 out of 5, and you could put it on your Facebook or your Twitter and share and brag about it, and then let people know. So we really want to make sure that people are paying attention to what do your loved ones maybe needs a little bit of help. If they start talking about, I think I won some money, or I just started dating this new person, sit down with them and share Scam Spotter. So I really appreciate Tate, you taking the time to meet with us today, to continue to partner with us. We're really excited to see what you come up with in your residence program there. And on behalf of the entire CSN team, thank you to the Google team for partnering with us and just helping us really get the word out to millions and millions of people thanks to our partnership. So I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today on Cyber Threat Thursday.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And, thanks to CSN for all the great work you're doing to help everybody be safer online. And I think that's so important.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm Kristin Judge, the CEO and founder of the Cybercrime Support Network. Check in again on Thursday next week for another Cyber Threat Thursday. Thank you so much, Tate, to you and the team at Google. We appreciate so much our partnership with you.
We do as well. Thank you so much.